Welcome aboard the Historical Express, where we explore the rich tapestry of human history. The Magna Carta, Latin for Great Charter, is one of the most influential and enduring documents in the history of constitutional and legal development. This seminal charter was sealed in 1215 during the turbulent reign of King John of England, marking a crucial turning point in the relationship between monarchs and their subjects. In this detailed account, we will explore the historical context, the key provisions, and the profound significance of the Magna Carta in shaping the course of Western legal and political thought. The historical context. To fully comprehend the significance of the Magna Carta, one must immerse themselves in the early 13th century setting of England, an era dominated by political turmoil, social unrest, and fervent power struggles. This was a time when divine right was believed to place kings above the law, and monarchy was the established form of government. However, the reign of King John, lasting from 1199 to 1216, proved to be a catalyst for an eventual shift in these conventional norms, ultimately leading to the birth of the Magna Carta. King John's ascension to the throne was already fraught with controversy, stemming from his dispute with his nephew Arthur of Brittany over succession following the death of his older brother, Richard the Lionheart. John's rise to the throne was a point of conflict that put him at odds with several powerful French lords and the French king himself, causing political tensions that would reverberate throughout his reign. One of the most contentious aspects of King John's rule was his fiscal policy, especially his high taxation. To fund his military campaigns, mainly aimed at reclaiming territories in France he had lost, commonly referred to as the Angevin Empire, John levied heavy taxes on his subjects. Not only did this taxation put a significant financial burden on the populace, but it was also administered arbitrarily, often without any consultation with the kingdom's nobility. Moreover, John's military endeavors proved unsuccessful. His attempts to regain the lost territories ended in failures, most notably with the catastrophic Battle of Bouvines in 1214. These military blunders caused further disillusionment among his subjects, and particularly disgruntled the English barons who provided men, money, and resources for his wars, only to see them squandered. This discontent was further exacerbated by John's heavy-handed and arbitrary rule. He was known to exploit feudal incidents, rights that a lord had over his tenants, and disregarded traditional forms of feudal governance. The abuse of power was also evident in his justice system, which he manipulated for personal gain, causing a pervading sense of injustice among his subjects. These elements combined to create a turbulent environment of distrust and resentment towards the monarchy. The barons, feeling the brunt of King John's oppressive taxation, his military failures, and his unjust rule, grew increasingly antagonistic. This widespread dissatisfaction set the stage for an unprecedented challenge to the monarch's absolute power and ultimately led to the seminal moment at Runnymede where the Magna Carta was born. However, to view the Magna Carta merely as a product of King John's despised rule would be an oversimplification. The Charter was the manifestation of broader societal changes taking shape. Emerging concepts of governance, law, and rights were beginning to question the unfettered power of the monarch. As we delve deeper into the events surrounding the Magna Carta, we will see that this historic document was not only a reaction to King John's reign, but also a significant milestone in the gradual shift towards constitutional monarchy and rule of law. The Confrontation at Runnymede. By the year 1215, the political climate in England had reached a fever pitch. After enduring years of King John's obstinate rule, rampant with high taxes, arbitrary justice, and failed military campaigns, a group of disgruntled barons decided to take unprecedented action. This culminated in a significant historical event that transpired in a meadow by the River Thames known as Runnymede, located near Windsor, where the rebellious barons met King John to express their grievances and demand change. Prior to the confrontation at Runnymede, the disenchanted barons, having had their attempts at negotiation repeatedly rebuffed, rebelled against the king. This rebellion, often known as the First Barons' War, resulted in the capture of London in May 1215. This significant power shift effectively forced King John's hand, compelling him to enter into negotiations with the barons. The venue chosen for these negotiations was the neutral ground of Runnymede. The face-off at Runnymede, which began on June 10, was more than a meeting. It was a clear display of baronial power and a potent challenge to the heretofore absolute authority of the king. The barons, armed with a comprehensive list of demands, were set to curb the king's overreaching power. On June 15, 1215, the king was presented with a document that detailed these demands, the Magna Carta, Latin for Great Charter. The document, drafted by the Archbishop of Canterbury Stephen Langton and the barons, was not a charter granting new rights. Instead, it was an attempt to limit the king's power by law and protect their rights. It comprised 63 clauses that called for numerous changes, including protection of church rights, protection for the barons from illegal imprisonment, access to swift justice, and limitations on feudal payments to the crown. However, it was not a democratic document in the modern sense. It primarily represented the interests of the barons and the church, with limited concessions to the knights and freemen. Remarkably, King John agreed to the terms laid out in the Magna Carta. However, it's important to understand that this was not a wholehearted acceptance, born of a newfound belief in the rule of law. Instead, it was a tactical move made under duress, aimed at appeasing the rebellious barons and ending the civil war. John's seal was affixed to the document, not signed in the sense we would understand today, indicating his reluctant acquiescence rather than his willing agreement. The confrontation at Runnymede marked an important milestone in the history of constitutional law. Even though King John would later repudiate the Magna Carta, leading to the continuation of the First Barons' War, the ideals it enshrined took root. The Magna Carta marked the first time a king of England was compelled to agree to a document that limited his powers and outlined the liberties of his subjects, a significant step towards constitutional monarchy and the principle that no one, not even the king, is above the law. The contents of the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta, known as the Great Charter, is a complex historical document that reflects the concerns and tensions of its time. Its 63 clauses, each addressing a specific issue or dispute, provide an intimate insight into the socio-political dynamics of early 13th century England. Upon close examination, it becomes clear that the Magna Carta contains both specific provisions addressing immediate matters of the time and more general principles, many of which have transcended their original context to shape the development of law and civil liberties worldwide. The very first clause of the Magna Carta highlights the importance the Church held in medieval society. It guarantees the freedom of the English Church and its rights, reflecting the barons' alliance with the Church in their conflict with the king. This underscores the significance of the Church as a key political player in this era. The subsequent clauses are highly specific, addressing particular medieval disputes and issues of concern to the barons, the knights, and the freemen. These include regulations on the levels of feudal relief, payments made to inherit an estate, restrictions on the power of the crown to exploit vacant sees for financial gain, and rules for the standardization of measures of wine, ale, and cloth. However, amidst these highly contextual stipulations, certain fundamental principles of law were also enshrined in the Magna Carta. Foremost among these are clauses 39 and 40. Clause 39 asserts that no free man shall be seized or imprisoned, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. This notion essentially encapsulates the right to a fair trial and protection from arbitrary imprisonment, embodying the principle of habeas corpus, which has become a cornerstone of modern jurisprudence. Clause 40 declares that, "To no one will we sell, to no one will we deny or delay right or justice." It underscores the principle of justice being accessible and not subject to the whims of the powerful, a principle that remains fundamental to the rule of law. Notably, the Magna Carta does not explicitly state that the king is subject to law. However, the very act of King John's sealing of the document implies this significant principle. The king's agreement to not infringe upon the rights and liberties outlined in the charter underscores the revolutionary idea that not even the monarch is above the law. It's important to remember that the Magna Carta was not a modern constitution or a Bill of Rights. It did not apply to the majority of the population, as the notion of free men in 13th century England constituted a small percentage of society. It was, in essence, a peace treaty between the king and the rebellious barons. However, the charter's endurance and lasting impact lies in its articulation of broader principles. The idea that governance must be according to law, the commitment to a certain degree of legal fairness, and the understanding that justice should not be bought or sold. These principles, embedded in the Magna Carta, resonated beyond its immediate context and have been continually invoked, interpreted, and adapted in the centuries since. It has informed the development of constitutional law and has been referenced in the establishment of civil liberties, influencing legal thought and practice around the world. The Magna Carta's true significance lies not just in the specifics of its individual clauses, but in its enduring legacy as a symbol of the rule of law and a safeguard against arbitrary power. Resistance, reissue, and reinterpretation. The Magna Carta's journey from Runnymede was not a straight path to canonical stature. Instead, it was a turbulent road marked by resistance, reinterpretation, and repeated reissuance. King John's grudging acquiescence to the charter was, as history would soon reveal, a tactical ploy rather than a true acknowledgement of its principles. His subsequent resistance and the events that ensued significantly contributed to the Magna Carta's eventual importance. Almost immediately after the confrontation at Runnymede, King John sought to invalidate the Magna Carta. He appealed to Pope Innocent II, asserting that he had been forced into sealing the charter under duress. The Pope, concerned about maintaining the Church's supremacy and recognizing the threat the charter posed to the principle of monarchical authority, declared the Magna Carta null and void of all validity forever in August 1215. With the Church's highest authority siding with him, King John felt emboldened to renounce his obligations under the charter, pushing England into a state of civil war known as the First Barons' War. However, King John's resistance to the Magna Carta did not have the long-lasting impact he likely hoped for. His death in October 1216 brought a sudden end to his despotic reign and left the throne to his 9-year-old son, Henry II, under a regency led by William Marshal. The new regime, in a bid to quell the ongoing rebellion and restore political stability, reissued the Magna Carta within days of Henry's coronation, albeit in a revised form with some of the original 63 clauses omitted. This strategic move aimed to pacify the rebels by demonstrating the young king's commitment to good governance and respect for the barons' rights and liberties. The Magna Carta was reissued again in 1217 and 1225, each time being further refined and adjusted to meet contemporary political realities. These reissues played a crucial role in cementing the Magna Carta's significance. They reinforced its principles and signaled the monarchy's ongoing commitment to the rule of law and respect for the liberties and privileges of the subjects. The 1225 reissue was particularly significant. Issued by Henry II in exchange for a grant of taxes by his subjects, it was shorter, down to 37 clauses, and more focused. This version became the definitive version of the Magna Carta and was the one officially entered into English law by Edward I in 1297. Through the repeated reissuances, the Magna Carta underwent a transformation. What was initially a practical solution to a political crisis was gradually recognized as a cornerstone of English governance. This evolution was not immediate or linear. It involved continual reinterpretation and adaptation in light of the changing political landscape. However, through this process, the Magna Carta evolved from being a treaty between the king and his rebellious barons to a document that represented an essential principle: the idea that the monarch's power had legal limits. This shift marked a pivotal moment in constitutional history. The Magna Carta's principles, initially intended to address specific feudal disputes, became pillars of what is today known as the rule of law. It laid the foundation for the notion of constitutional governance, thereby ensuring its place as a cornerstone of English law and its far-reaching influence on legal systems around the world. The Magna Carta and the rule of law. The evolution of the Magna Carta from a 13th century peace treaty to an enduring symbol of the rule of law is one of the most fascinating narratives of legal and constitutional history. Over centuries, the Magna Carta has moved beyond its specific historical context to become a foundational principle of governance that has resonated globally, playing a crucial role in the development of common law, constitutional law, and fundamental human rights. The rule of law, as a principle, posits that no individual, regardless of their station, is above the law, and that the law must be applied evenly and fairly. It champions the idea that governance must be based on laws, not the arbitrary will of rulers. Although the Magna Carta was not explicitly framed as a declaration of the rule of law, its fundamental tenets, particularly as laid out in clauses 39 and 40, embody this principle. By constraining the power of the king, the Magna Carta introduced the revolutionary notion that governance is bound by law. Over time, this concept, as outlined in the Magna Carta, was repeatedly invoked and solidified, serving as a crucial foundation for the development of English common law. The principles enshrined in the Magna Carta were carried forward in subsequent legal charters and statutes, including the Petition of Right, 1628, the Habeas Corpus Act, 1679, and the Bill of Rights, 1689, which together formed the bedrock of British constitutional law. The Magna Carta's influence, however, extends far beyond the shores of England. It has been instrumental in shaping constitutional law globally. For instance, its principles can be seen echoed in the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Clause 39 of the Magna Carta, guaranteeing the right to a fair trial and protection against arbitrary punishment, clearly resonates in the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Moreover, the Magna Carta's influence is not limited to established democracies. As nations around the world drafted their own constitutions, many looked to the principles of the Magna Carta for guidance. Its influence can thus be seen in constitutional documents and legal systems across diverse continents and cultures, testifying to its universal appeal. In addition to its impact on the rule of law and constitutional development, the Magna Carta also played a significant role in shaping discourse on human rights, particularly in relation to justice, fairness, and freedom from oppression. Although the Magna Carta was not originally intended as a human rights document, its fundamental principles have been invoked and adapted in the formulation and development of human rights, influencing significant documents such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Today, the Magna Carta stands as a symbol of the rule of law, its legacy evident in legal systems worldwide. It serves as a reminder of the journey from unchecked autocratic rule to the principle that law governs all, irrespective of status. From the meadows of Runnymede to the core of global jurisprudence, the Magna Carta remains a testament to the enduring power of its foundational ideals, the commitment to justice, fairness, and the rule of law. The Magna Carta's international influence. The influence of the Magna Carta on constitutional thought and law extends far beyond England's shores. As the first document to set down in writing the principle that the monarch and the government were not above the law, the Magna Carta set a precedent that would echo down the centuries. Its influence can be found in the constitutional fabric of numerous nations worldwide, with its most prominent influences seen in the United States Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Firstly, we turn our gaze across the Atlantic to the United States. During the American Revolution and the subsequent Constitutional Convention, The principles outlined in the Magna Carta were key inspirations for the nation's founding fathers. The American revolutionaries sought in their struggle an echo of the barons at Runnymede, standing up to an overbearing monarch who trampled on their rights and liberties. They frequently cited the Magna Carta in their writings and speeches, drawing parallels between their cause and the ideals it enshrined. The influence of the Magna Carta is clearly seen in the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. For example, the concept of due process of law in the Fifth Amendment directly reflects Clause 39 of the Magna Carta, which states that no free man shall be imprisoned except by the law of the land. Moreover, the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, also mirrors the Magna Carta's principles. Thus, the spirit of the Magna Carta is deeply embedded in the very foundation of American constitutional law. Another notable instance of the Magna Carta's international influence is seen in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Drafted by representatives from diverse legal and cultural backgrounds and adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948, the Declaration was designed to represent a common standard of rights for all people and all nations. The principles enshrined in the Magna Carta, particularly those related to justice, fairness, and the rule of law, resonate within the Declaration. Articles 6 to 11 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which outline the fundamental norms of procedural justice and legality, echo the Magna Carta's tenets. These articles guarantee the right to recognition as a person before the law, protection against arbitrary arrest, the right to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal, and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. All these principles, central to the modern conception of human rights, can be traced back to the ideals enshrined in the Magna Carta. Moreover, the Magna Carta's influence has not been limited to nations that share a common legal heritage with England. As countries around the globe drafted their own constitutions, many sought inspiration from the Magna Carta. Its imprint can thus be found in constitutional texts and legal systems from Asia to Africa to Latin America. The Magna Carta's global influence is testament to its enduring significance. From Runnymede's meadow to the world stage, it has played a crucial role in shaping the legal and political fabric of numerous nations. The ideas it enshrined of limited government, legal equality, and the rule of law have resonated across centuries and continents, underpinning our understanding of civil liberties and human rights. Its enduring legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the value of these hard-won principles and the continual struggle required to uphold them. Modern interpretations and legacies. As we navigate through the 21st century, the Magna Carta remains a compelling touchstone in our ongoing dialogue about law, governance, and individual rights. Its echoes can be heard in contemporary political and legal discourses worldwide, underlining its lasting resonance. Nevertheless, the Magna Carta's legacy in the modern world is multifaceted and nuanced, and understanding it requires an exploration of both its enduring symbolic power and the controversies that surround it. In the realm of legal philosophy and praxis, the Magna Carta often serves as a cornerstone of discussions on constitutional law and the principles of justice. Its core tenets, particularly the assertions that no individual is above the law and that every person has a right to a fair trial, continue to inform jurisprudential debates, court judgments, and legislative processes across numerous jurisdictions. It is invoked in legal cases concerning human rights, civil liberties, and constitutional matters, highlighting its continued relevance in the fabric of contemporary law. The symbolic power of the Magna Carta, however, extends beyond legal circles. In the broader arena of public discourse, the Magna Carta is often summoned as a potent symbol of freedom and justice. It's frequently referenced in discussions about democratic governance and civil rights, and is perceived as an embodiment of the struggle against tyranny and arbitrary rule. As such, the Magna Carta has been harnessed by various political movements, often to support arguments for liberty, justice, and the rule of law. However, modern interpretations of the Magna Carta are not devoid of controversy. Some critics argue that its significance is often overstated or romanticized, pointing out that many of its original clauses were specific to the feudal society of 13th century England and do not carry direct relevance to the modern era. For instance, numerous clauses dealt with specific feudal customs and rights, which bear little relation to contemporary societal structures and norms. Furthermore, it's worth noting that the Magna Carta, while groundbreaking, was limited in its scope and did not apply universally. Its protections largely extended to free men, a term that, in the context of 13th century England, did not encompass serfs, women, or children. Thus, critics assert that the Magna Carta's contribution to universal human rights is often mythologized. This controversy illuminates the complexities of the Magna Carta's legacy. On the one hand, it represents a vital stepping stone towards the development of constitutional law, and it symbolizes the enduring ideals of justice and the rule of law. On the other hand, it was a product of its time, limited in its scope, and its modern interpretations often fail to consider these historical contexts. Conclusion: the Magna Carta, more than a document. As we draw this extensive exploration to a close, it becomes evident that the Magna Carta is far more than a mere historical document. It is a living testament to a critical juncture in the evolution of law and governance, and its echoes reverberate loudly in our present-day world. While the parchment itself is a product of its time, encapsulating the specific disputes and power dynamics of 13th century England, the principles it enshrines have proven to be universal, transcending temporal and geographic boundaries to influence legal and political systems worldwide. The Magna Carta is, above all, a symbol of humanity's enduring struggle for rights and justice. Its essence lies not in its feudal specifics, but in its broader principles, the affirmation that no one, not even a monarch, is above the law, the guarantee that all free individuals have the right to justice and a fair trial, and the declaration that arbitrary rule has no place in just governance. These ideas, revolutionary in the context of medieval Europe, still resonate profoundly today, shaping our understanding of democracy, constitutionalism, and human rights. The Magna Carta's influence is global. Its footprints can be traced in the legal structures of nations across continents, from the United States Constitution to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The core values it promotes, justice, fairness, and rule of law, form the bedrock of modern democratic societies. Indeed, it is no exaggeration to say that without the Magna Carta, our world would look strikingly different. The document, with its 63 clauses and countless principles, has woven itself into the very fabric of our societal norms and expectations. However, as much as the Magna Carta is celebrated, it is also debated. Its interpretations are diverse and often contentious, serving as a reminder that history is not static, but a dynamic discourse. The document is not immune to criticism, with debates revolving around its applicability to contemporary society, the universality of its claims, and the extent of its influence. Such discussions not only enrich our understanding of the Magna Carta, but also reflect its enduring relevance. The Magna Carta, thus, is not just a document but a conversation, a dialogue about the very nature of law, governance, and human rights. In its essence, the Magna Carta serves as a beacon, illuminating our path as we navigate the challenges of governance, law, and societal justice. It urges us to question, to debate, and to strive for a fair and just society. More than 8 centuries after it was sealed, the Magna Carta continues to breathe, its spirit alive in the courthouses, the legislatures, and the public squares of the world. Its legacy reminds us of our shared commitment to the principles of justice, fairness, and the rule of law, principles that are as pertinent today as they were on the fields of Runnymede. As such, the Magna Carta is indeed much more than a document. It is a cornerstone of our collective human heritage. More information and facts, individual stories and characters. The human faces of the Magna Carta. To fully appreciate the circumstances surrounding the Magna Carta's creation, we must acquaint ourselves with the key figures involved. Their motivations, actions, and interactions played a pivotal role in the shaping of this historic document. Let's delve deeper into the stories of King John, Archbishop Stephen Langton, the barons, and Pope Innocent II. King John, 1166 to 1216, the youngest son of Henry I and Eleanor of Aquitaine, ascended to the throne in 1199 following the death of his brother, Richard I, the Lionheart. King John's rule was marked by various crises, including significant territorial losses in France and hefty financial burdens from unsuccessful military campaigns, leading to heavy taxation of his subjects. His oppressive fiscal policies, disregard for traditional privileges of the nobility, and arbitrary justice led to widespread discontent. It's essential to acknowledge that John was not a cartoon villain, as he is sometimes painted, but a complex individual navigating the intricate dynamics of medieval politics and power. His flawed rulership, however, played a critical role in the creation of the Magna Carta. Archbishop Stephen Langton, the Archbishop of Canterbury from 1207 until his death in 1228, was a central figure in the saga of the Magna Carta. Appointed by Pope Innocent III, but initially rejected by John, Langton's arrival in England in 1213 marked a turning point. As a mediator between the rebellious barons and King John, he played an instrumental role in the creation of the Magna Carta. Langton's understanding of theology, philosophy, and canon law provided the intellectual underpinning for the charter. He was seen as a champion of English liberties and became a pivotal figure in the struggle between church, monarchy, and nobility. The barons, too, played a crucial role in this historical drama. These feudal lords, taxed heavily and disrespected by John's arbitrary rule, were the driving force behind the Magna Carta. Figures like Robert Fitzwalter, who was appointed the Marshal of the Army of God, and the Holy Church, became prominent leaders in the revolt against John. These barons were not simply disgruntled nobles. They represented a broad coalition seeking to re-establish their traditional rights and to curb the king's autocratic tendencies. Finally, Pope Innocent II, 1160 to 1216, had a significant part to play in the Magna Carta's story. He initially supported King John during the Baronial Rebellion, viewing the charter as a dangerous precedent that threatened the traditional order of Christendom. He subsequently annulled the charter after its issuance. Yet his annulment led to further civil war and eventually to the reissue of the Magna Carta under John's successor, King Henry II. Innocent II's actions thus had profound unintended consequences, contributing to the Magna Carta's longevity. Comparative analysis. The Magna Carta in a global context. The Magna Carta, a pivotal document in the development of constitutional law, represents a significant step in the journey towards rights and governance. Its historical importance is evident, but when contrasted with similar charters in other cultures and periods, we can further illuminate its uniqueness and its place within the broader tapestry of legal and constitutional development. One such comparative touchpoint is the Golden Bull of 1222 in Hungary. Like the Magna Carta, the Golden Bull was issued following a period of royal excess and aristocratic rebellion, and it also put forth limitations on royal power in favor of the nobility. Yet while the Magna Carta laid a foundation for universal human rights and liberties, the Golden Bull largely focused on the rights of Hungary's nobility. It emphasized the protection of nobles from unjust arrest and their properties from arbitrary confiscation, and it allowed them the right to disobey the king if he acted contrary to law. The Golden Bull, while significant in its context, did not reach as far as the Magna Carta in articulating a more universal conception of justice and law. Similarly, the Japanese 17-article constitution from 604 AD can offer another comparative perspective. Though calling it a constitution might be anachronistic, it was a set of moral and political principles set out by Prince Shotoku. This document was, in many ways, a moral and philosophical guideline rather than a legal one, emphasizing harmony, respect, and appropriate conduct more than legal rights and restrictions on governmental power. It was more an ethical blueprint for good governance than a contract between a ruler and ruled, unlike the Magna Carta, which took the form of a literal charter laying out specific legal and political limitations on royal authority. Finally, the Constitution of Medina from the 7th century, enacted under the leadership of the Islamic prophet Muhammad, offers an interesting contrast. This document was effectively a social contract between the diverse communities of Medina, establishing collective responsibilities and rights and paving the way for political unity. Though it provided for the welfare, security, and religious freedom of the signatory tribes, it did not limit the leader's power in the way the Magna Carta did. These comparisons serve to underscore the Magna Carta's unique place in legal and constitutional history. While other charters might have similarly curtailed the power of rulers or aimed to create a sense of social harmony, the Magna Carta stands out in its detailed articulation of legal principles, its assertion of the rule of law over arbitrary royal authority, and its nascent vision of universally applicable rights and justice. It may not have been the first document to propose such notions, but its wide-ranging influence and endurance testify to its singular importance in shaping the legal and political landscapes of not just England, but much of the world. In-depth legal analysis, dissecting the principles and influence of the Magna Carta. Examining the legal principles enshrined in the Magna Carta offers an intricate view of its historical and ongoing impact on law. Although some of its clauses are firmly rooted in the 13th century's feudal realities, others carry timeless principles that form the bedrock of today's legal systems. A central principle articulated in the Magna Carta is the notion that no one is above the law, including the king. Clauses 39 and 40 are particularly instrumental in this regard. Clause 39 stipulates that no freeman shall be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. Clause 40, on the other hand, asserts that to no one will we sell, to no one deny or delay right or justice. These two clauses articulate principles that would become cornerstones of common law: habeas corpus, the right not to be unlawfully detained, and due process of law. Moreover, the Magna Carta established a mechanism to enforce these principles, a council of 25 barons who could, if the king defaulted on his obligations, wage lawful war against him. This proto-parliamentary body provided a rudimentary form of checks and balances, prefiguring the later rise of parliamentary governance. These legal principles have had a profound and wide-reaching influence. In English law, the Magna Carta's principles are seen as the origin of key elements of common law, particularly the rights to a fair trial and protection against unlawful detention. In the United States, the influence of the Magna Carta is apparent in the Fifth Amendment, which asserts that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Furthermore, these principles have been invoked in numerous significant legal cases. For instance, in the landmark case of Entick v. Carrington, 1765, the English court relied on Magna Carta principles to hold that the state cannot violate a person's property rights without legal justification. Similarly, in the U.S., the Supreme Court decision in the famous case of Boumediene v. Bush, 2008, involved granting habeas corpus rights to Guantanamo detainees, a direct invocation of Magna Carta's principles. However, it is crucial to note that the Magna Carta's significance goes beyond the specific laws it influenced. Its real power lies in its embodiment of the rule of law and its assertion of fundamental human rights, which have become central tenets of liberal democracies worldwide. Its principles reverberate across centuries and borders, shaping legal norms, societal expectations, and human rights standards across the globe. In the final analysis, the Magna Carta is not merely a historic document. It is a living testament to timeless principles that continue to shape our legal and political reality. Contextual background. The Magna Carta within the tapestry of 13th century England. The Magna Carta's creation did not occur in a historical vacuum. It was a product of a specific time and place, influenced by complex economic, social, and cultural conditions in 13th century England. Understanding this context illuminates why the Magna Carta was formulated, why it possessed the power it did, and how it ultimately came to exert such a profound influence. Economically, England was undergoing significant changes in the 13th century. The failed military campaigns in France conducted by King John resulted in substantial financial losses for the kingdom. To recuperate these losses, King John levied excessive taxes on his subjects, particularly the barons. This imposition added to the already considerable financial burden the feudal system placed on the nobility and led to severe economic strain and discontent. This discontent, coupled with the arbitrary manner in which these taxes were often imposed, was a significant driving force behind the barons' rebellion and the Magna Carta's creation. Simultaneously, social structures were also in flux. The rigid hierarchies of feudalism, which had governed English society for centuries, were beginning to show signs of strain. The growing power of the barons, increasingly restless under the king's oppressive rule, began to challenge the absolute authority of the monarchy. This societal tension found its expression in the Magna Carta, which, while initially aimed at protecting the rights and privileges of the nobility, laid the groundwork for a broader understanding of rights and liberties. Culturally, the 13th century was a period of profound intellectual and ideological transformation. The Church played an influential role in shaping societal values and norms, and religious figures like Archbishop Stephen Langton were pivotal in the formulation of the Magna Carta. Furthermore, the ideas of accountability, justice, and rights were gaining increasing currency. The emerging recognition of these concepts was, in part, a reaction against the king's abuses of power. The Magna Carta captured this ideological shift, articulating principles of justice, due process, and the rule of law that were revolutionary for their time. Finally, one cannot ignore the political context of the time. The struggles between King John and his barons were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader European trend of the nobility pushing back against monarchical despotism. In this sense, the Magna Carta can be seen as a local manifestation of a larger continental trend toward curtailing monarchical power and asserting the rights of subjects. Contemporary significance. The Magna Carta in today's legal and political landscape. The Magna Carta's legacy extends far beyond the 13th century meadows of Runnymede. Its principles continue to resonate in contemporary law and politics, marking it as a living document that transcends its historical origins. Through its continual invocations in legal and political discourse, we find a testament to its enduring relevance. In the field of law, the Magna Carta's principles, particularly those regarding the rule of law and due process, remain foundational. In the United States, for example, the Supreme Court regularly invokes the Magna Carta when considering cases related to due process and habeas corpus. In Hamdi v. Rumsfeld, 2004, a case concerning the detention of U.S. citizens designated as enemy combatants, the Supreme Court cited the Magna Carta as an ancient source affirming the right of individuals to receive notice and an opportunity to respond before being deprived of their liberty. By grounding their judgment in the principles of the Magna Carta, the justices affirmed its enduring significance in protecting individual rights against arbitrary state power. Moreover, the Magna Carta continues to be invoked in the struggle for human rights globally. In 2008, the United Nations referred to the Magna Carta in a resolution reaffirming the importance of the rule of law as a foundation for building peaceful societies and preventing conflicts. The document serves as a universal touchstone for those advocating for justice, fairness, and human rights, and it is frequently referred to in discussions about governance and accountability. In political discourse, the Magna Carta has been repeatedly invoked to justify or critique government actions. Politicians often reference it to underline the importance of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. For instance, in his 2011 speech in Strasbourg, UK Prime Minister David Cameron invoked the Magna Carta to underscore his commitment to restoring civil liberties in the UK, thereby invoking the Magna Carta as a symbol of the democratic principles he sought to uphold. However, the Magna Carta's contemporary significance is not without controversy. It has sometimes been used to legitimize particular political agendas and is often invoked more for its symbolic potency than its actual legal content. The gap between the Magna Carta's historical reality and its modern myth has been a source of ongoing debate among legal scholars and historians. Some argue that its importance has been exaggerated, while others maintain that its symbolic power as a representation of freedom and justice is significant in and of itself. Artistic and cultural influence. The Magna Carta's mark on the canvas of society. The Magna Carta, while primarily a legal and political document, has seeped into the wider fabric of culture, influencing art, literature, and popular culture. This influence reaffirms the Magna Carta as not just a charter of liberties, but as a potent symbol inspiring creative expression. In the realm of visual arts, the Magna Carta has served as a muse for artists seeking to capture its spirit. One of the most famous artistic representations of the Magna Carta is a bronze statue by James Butler, situated at Runnymede, which symbolizes the enduring significance of this Charter of Liberties. In addition, many artists have visually rendered the scene of King John signing the Magna Carta, often in ways that reflect the artist's interpretation of the event's meaning. The Magna Carta has also permeated literature and drama, often used as a metaphor for freedom and justice. One can find references to the Magna Carta in works ranging from William Shakespeare's play, King John, to Hilary Mantel's historical novel, Wolf Hall. In these contexts, the Magna Carta serves to underscore themes of power, resistance, and the quest for justice. Moreover, the Magna Carta has found its way into popular culture, becoming a symbol recognized beyond academic and legal circles. It has been featured in films, television series, and even comic books. For instance, the 2010 film Ironclad dramatizes the events surrounding the sealing of the Magna Carta. In the Doctor Who series, the time-traveling protagonist claims to have brokered the negotiations that led to the Magna Carta signing. Such portrayals contribute to the popular understanding and mythologizing of the Magna Carta. On a more abstract level, the Magna Carta has influenced the cultural discourse on rights, justice, and freedom. It has become a cultural icon, representing the struggle against tyranny and the quest for individual rights. This iconography is often invoked in political and social movements advocating for liberty and justice, underscoring the Magna Carta's continued cultural resonance. Critiques and controversies. The Magna Carta under the lens of critical scrutiny. Like any document of significant historical import, the Magna Carta is not without its critics. Debates over its role and significance have persisted for centuries and continue to animate historical and legal scholarship. These controversies encompass its actual impact on medieval society, its role in promoting democracy and the rule of law, and the manipulation of its meaning for political ends. In examining its immediate impact, some scholars question the extent to which the Magna Carta genuinely influenced medieval society. They argue that it was initially a failed peace treaty between King John and his rebellious barons, and its immediate practical effect was minimal. It is also worth noting that many of its clauses were specific to the circumstances of the 13th century and have long since fallen into obsolescence. The Magna Carta's role in promoting democracy and the rule of law is also a subject of controversy. While it is lauded as a foundation stone of constitutional law, some historians point out that it was not originally intended as a universal declaration of rights. Instead, it was a series of concessions made by a beleaguered king to a select group of his subjects. The notion that the Magna Carta established the principles of democracy and rule of law is seen by some as an anachronistic interpretation, projecting modern ideals onto a medieval document. The manipulation of the Magna Carta's significance for political purposes adds another layer of complexity. Throughout history, the Magna Carta has been invoked to legitimize various political agendas. In the 17th century, for example, it was used by opponents of the Stuart monarchs to challenge the idea of absolute monarchy. In more recent times, it has been invoked in political speeches and campaigns to symbolize commitments to liberty and the rule of law. Some critics argue that these invocations often oversimplify or distort the Magna Carta's original meaning, using it more for its symbolic power than its actual historical content. Furthermore, debates over its international influence often center on whether the Magna Carta's principles are universal or specific to the cultural and historical context of 13th century England. While it undoubtedly influenced the development of legal systems worldwide, some argue that its principles have been overextended, contributing to a form of legal imperialism.